So Donald Trump's niece, Mary Trump, is again weighing in on what she believes is the growing fear in her uncle, Donald Trump, of the walls closing in around him and criminality enveloping him and possibly leading to charges. And we're going to look at a clip of her appearing on, I believe it's MSNBC, to talk about this. And I do find it interesting, but at the same time, and if I'm wrong, please tell me, I appreciate the perspective of someone from Trump's family. And when she first emerged from the shadows, it was particularly interesting. But now I'm actually wondering what Mary Trump really knows about what's going on right now with Donald Trump, because as far as I know, she has no contact with him or that side of the family whatsoever. So let's take a listen. This is interesting, and it may well be what Donald Trump is feeling, but it may be just as speculative as what I can deduce Trump might be feeling from his posts on Truth Social more than any personal knowledge. Let's take a look.
Joining me now is Donald Trump's niece, Mary Trump. She's the author of Too Much and Never Enough. Mary, good morning. Always good to see you. Listen, by your training, you are a psychologist, and you also know you are someone who knows Trump very well. What do you think is going through his mind right now? Because there's an incredibly getting even larger amount of damning testimony that's coming out. And notably, he did not attack Pat Cipollone before Cipollone testified before the 1-6 committee.
Yeah, good morning, Katie. I think Neil Katyal summed it up quite nicely. To say that Donald is terrified is accurate and also an understatement. I think this might be the first time in his entire life that even he can't deny the walls may indeed be closing in. The amount of evidence that we've seen coming out at these committee hearings is overwhelming, but even more troubling for him is the witnesses now coming forward.
So, I mean, yeah, it's interesting, but it has a sort of like daytime TV feel thing to it rather than real journalism, because Mary Trump has no contact with Trump, and she hasn't for a long time. And let's imagine she's right about Trump's fears and state of mind right now, which she may well be. It's possible to come to that same conclusion from what's available publicly. In fact, I have come to the same conclusion. So that's one piece of it, and the continued Mary Trump interviews. On the other hand, when it comes to accountability has to be real. It can't just be discussed. It can't just be, well, accountability is all these people made you look really guilty during their testimony. Okay, that's fine, but it's got to lead to something. And maybe if Trump is held accountable at some point, we can sort of define a line that can't be crossed, and it would be quite a low bar. But if we can't even do that, then this is just going to happen again. And we've talked before about how right now, because there have been no real consequences for Donald Trump to everything that he did, and I won't give you the full list because I'm sure at this point you're sick of hearing it, it's not evident that you can't cross the lines. We're not really a democracy in the sense of checks and balances, one person, one vote, etc. If you can have checks and balances that don't actually keep anyone in check and balanced against their fascistic tendencies. And we don't know what's taking so long. Now, to some degree, it takes a while to build cases. And if there are indictments from DOJ, it may take some time. But for now, it is not clear that we even have an infrastructure willing and able to assign consequences and repercussions for what has taken place. So interesting to hear from Mary Trump. I don't really know that at this point she really knows any more than any of us do, because of how long she hasn't been in touch with Donald Trump. Newsmax host Greg Kelly has an idea for unifying the country. Just pardon all the January 6th Trump riot defenders. Joe Biden could really bring everybody together if he just said, hey, you know what? We're going to let you all go. We're going to pardon all of you. Now, how that would unite the country, I don't know, but let's listen to what Greg Kelly had to say.
Political opponents, political enemies in jail. If he wanted to unify this country, on January 21st, after he made that solemn pledge, his whole soul was in it, to unify us, he could have gone to that jail and made arrangements for them to be let go.
How would that even unify the country? Like, most of the country, it's shocking that the country's ever really united on anything, but most of the country is already united that the riots were bad. It was Trumpists who did it. The perpetrators should be prosecuted. So how would saying we're going to let all you guys go How would that unite the country? It seems it would be an incredibly dumb thing to do. Maybe he meant, instead of unifying, this is how to capitulate to the extreme right. Just let all of them go. And meanwhile, remember that they preach personal responsibility in all of it. They say, we have to be responsible for our actions. We have to take seriously when we make a decision. We have ultimate agency. We are the ultimate agents of our lives. And sometimes those actions come with consequences. But actually, the president should just let all of us go. What? And the other kind of layer to this that's weird, and I don't expect a host on Newsmax to really understand this or take it seriously anyway, is if they did nothing wrong, as is another narrative, then why would they need to be pardoned? If they didn't do anything wrong, they'll just be found not guilty. They will never stop claiming that the other side needs to do something. What about not rioting? What about that as a way to stay out of trouble? Don't riot to begin with, and then you wouldn't have this problem from the get-go. Every principle that they claim to espouse goes in the third element of the bathroom, the toilet, as soon as it's inconvenient. And now it's personal responsibility. Well, all of a sudden it's up to Biden, it's up for whoever to give them these quite literally get out of jail free cards. Not going to happen. And it actually wouldn't unify the country. It would do the opposite, because most of the country, shockingly, actually thinks these rioters did do something wrong and they need to be held accountable. This is now completely beyond parody. MyPillow CEO and founder Mike Lindell. I know you're going to say, David, but you did this story last year. I know. Mike Lindell, also known as Mike Pillow or just Pillow, has new, very, very big, not just very big, but very, very big cyber evidence that is going to blow the roof off of the 2020 election. Now, we're only, 3.5 months from the 2022 election, but he's still working on 2020. Listen to this. And at this point, does anyone believe this? I mean, the crowds at Trump rallies cheer when he says this stuff, but do they even believe it?
I got news this morning that there was very big, everybody, pieces of evidence, cyber evidence from the 2020 election that we didn't even know before that now we have. I'm just like so excited. Validated. Multiple sources, and we also found from another source, a completely different cyber guy.
He seems almost bored by his own blockbuster news. He sounds kind of like he's over it.
He found more evidence from the Mesa data, which we have right up here in Frank's speech. So all you horrible journalists out there that are watching tonight, you might want to take a look there and look at what I'm talking about, and get your cyber guys ready. There's more to come, and it's very readable and understandable.
A sniffing, disheveled, uncomfortable-looking Mike Pillow making declarations that even his co-host seems to be pretty damn skeptical of. Now, would it be shocking to you to find out that all of this new evidence comes from Nest thermostats? That would be a big shock, but apparently Nest thermostats are the new nexus of cyber criminality. I'm genuinely curious about how long this is going to go, because we're almost at the 2022 midterms. Could Pillow keep going with this beyond the 2022 midterms? What about 2024? Like, there's no way that after 24, he would say, we're going to go back and reinstate Trump from the 2020 election, right? Like that seems beyond even Pillow's ability to take himself seriously. I don't know the answer, but he's still invited to the Trump rallies. He still speaks there. And at some point, the question has to become, if he keeps repeating it, is it because people keep believing it and thinking that this guy knows something when he knows nothing at all? Maybe like with Trump, it's more about the followers than the person saying the stuff. Strange, bizarre, unusual, and also comical, quite frankly. But the perfect touch here is that he just seems bored. He's like, I have very, very big evidence. It's coming out soon. This is like the biggest, most exciting thing. And we're going to tell you it's from, it's from Arizona, and it's going to just blow everything up. It's going to overturn the election. He couldn't be more bored with his own so-called data. All right. The question I have is, how long will this go on? Will it go on beyond 2022? Will it get all the way to 2024? When will Pillow end this madness? Find me on Twitter at dpacman and let me know. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpacman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpacman.com. The David Pakman Show is different from other shows, at least from some other shows. We depend on the support of our audience for our operation, meaning you can sign up at joinpacman.com and become a member and get the bonus show. Oh, the bonus show. Yeah. And the commercial-free audio and video streams of the show and all of it. And you can do it at a discount with the coupon code BIGVOTING22. Let's hear from some people in the audience at davidpakman.com/Discord. And you can, Discord is free. I'm not selling you anything other than a good time. And we will hear from some people, because if you weren't here, it would be really weird. Let's start with Ricky from Charlotte. Ricky, welcome to the program. What's on your mind today?
Hey, David. I wanted to ask you about two potential future scenarios that I think are somewhat plausible and could give the left some hope if they do happen. I just want to see how likely you thought they were.
Okay.
The first one being around the Supreme Court. I see that it seems now the court is completely politicized. Like all of the retirements will be super politicized by all the justices going forward. But I do wonder if we could hope that Roberts is not as crazy as like the Republican, as like, you know, the way the Republicans are now, and he's and it would be conceivable that at some point he could retire when there is a Democrat in office. I don't see that happening with like Alito or Thomas or any of the crazy ones, but Roberts is someone that I'm holding hope on. Do you think that could happen?
I mean, sure, but he's only 67. So, you know, if history is an indicator, it's not happening anytime soon. It's not happening soon enough that there's really any reason to speculate now, because it could be decades away.
Yeah, I mean, 67 is, I mean, you know, maybe it could be like 10 years from now. I mean, you know, if he's been on the court for like 20 years at this point, I think I saw like the average justice serves like around 20 years or something like that. So,
okay,
I don't know.
I mean, listen, there's nothing we can do about it. It can't be part of any kind of strategy, I guess is my point, because we don't know when it would happen anyway.
Yeah, but I just don't see that it would happen with anyone else. And if it happened with him, I feel like that would, you know, that could bode well for us. But okay, the second one I just want to ask about really quick. If Trump and DeSantis or other Republicans go at it in the primary, if Trump loses, I feel like he will do another, it was rigged against me, and the establishment is stealing from me. He's like, stop the steal BS, and like cause the Republican, the RNC, like the same headaches that he's caused like the whole country and stuff. Do you see that happening? Do you think if that did happen, would he potentially run as a third party?
No, I mean, maybe, but listen, so here's the deal. Trump would never win as a third party. And of course, if Trump fights for the Republican nomination and loses, he will say that it was rigged and stolen from him by the rhinos. But then that'll be it. You know, he'll be like almost 80 and he's not going to run at age 84. And it'll be it. So yes, it'll be annoying and he'll do it. But then we'll be rid of Trump.
Do you think that would damage whoever the nominee is in that point, like the Republicans in general?
If he ran as a third party candidate?
No. If he lost and like went
attacked
on the whole,
the primary.
Like, yeah, exactly.
No, probably not.
Dang. Okay, man. I was hoping for.
I think what would hurt Republicans is just a really long and contentious primary. I think that would be bad for Republicans.
Yeah, because I remember last time before the primary, Ted Cruz actually seemed like a politician that could win an election. And after Trump humiliated him, I don't see him ever like winning national. I mean, never say never, but he seems like super weak now. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you, David.
All right, Ricky from Charlotte. Thank you so much. Very, very much appreciate that. Let's see what else we have going on here because we are taking calls. Let's go next to Cheng from Taiwan. Cheng, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Just barely.
I'll try to speak up.
Okay.
Basically, what I wanted to talk about today was less of a question, more kind of just exasperation, but the Republicans and the logic they apply to gun regulation is just ridiculous because they never seem to apply it to just about anything else. Imagine if the logic that they applied to guns was applied to abortions. You know, if people want this, if they're determined to get this, they're going to get it somehow. But they don't seem to be able to see how their own logic can apply to other situations, scenarios, and perhaps
the issue with that particular example is that it can also be reversed on the left by saying, hey, if your argument is that by banning abortions, you don't actually stop them, then why do you think banning guns will work? Right? So that one can be turned around on anybody.
True, but for the left, that would be more the case that even if it's not a 100% prevention, it's still a decrease, which is what you actually want.
Well, they could say that about abortion. They could say, yes, some people will go and have an unsafe home abortion, but it will be a decrease. I mean, they can literally use the exact same phraseology.
You are right on that. It's just very frustrating. Especially
it's frustrating. I don't deny that there is a double standard.
Stuff recently as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good point, although I think that they always have a counterpoint to it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they don't necessarily need their counterpoints to be consistent.
No, they don't. No, I mean, the right doesn't care about consistency.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my call.
All right, Cheng, thank you very much. Very soft-spoken with a quiet connection. Made it a little difficult, but we did it. We really did. Let's go next to... How about Stevie from Asheville, North Carolina? Stevie, welcome.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
I just had a question, a little bit of a specific question today. I guess the theme is Supreme Court. But so in the idea of, or in counseling, there's this concept of duty to protect, whereas a client has confidentiality from their therapist. In most cases, except for a few specific ones, and just like to list one, for instance, child abuse. If a client were to disclose to a therapist that they're abusing their child, then duty to warn, duty to protect, the counselor would have to inform the law.
Of course.
My question is, in the wake of this Supreme Court decision in which some states are going to ban abortion, I'm curious if some states are going to say, oh, a fetus, that is a child. If a client were to say they're seeking an abortion outside of the state, would that fall under child abuse? And would the counselor have a duty to protect for an unborn child?
So they would absolutely argue that. I think the question would be whether local police could really do anything about it. Because let's imagine a different example. I guess imagine that a client disclosed to a client in Texas disclosed to their therapist, I'm planning to kill someone in Amsterdam or something like that. Okay, so the therapist can go and they can call Texas police, and Texas police maybe could ask some questions, but they really probably can't do anything. The crime is supposedly going to happen in Amsterdam. And then if you call Amsterdam police and say this person might be doing this thing, they would say, okay, thanks for letting us know. If they come to Amsterdam, then we will be aware of it, but there's nothing they can do until the person is there. So in thinking about the instance of abortion's banned in Texas, you tell your therapist, I'm going to go to neighboring wherever to get an abortion. I don't think Texas police can really do anything about it because it's not a crime in that other state and they're not planning to do it in Texas. Yeah, I think that they will make the argument, but I don't think it will be very effective at doing anything.
Right. I think that it all comes back to trying to enforce abortion laws like this in general is just kind of silly.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And there are going to be all sorts of absurd situations like this for sure, but we'll have to deal with them as they come up.
Right. Okay. Well, that's just the thought I've been having lately. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Stevie from Asheville. Very much appreciate it. Nice connection. Got right to the question. Hard to beat that. Let's go next to Dylan from Massachusetts. Dylan, welcome.
Hey, David. How's it going?
It's going well.
It's good to hear. So if Biden were to, by executive order, set up abortion clinics on federal land in states that have banned abortion, do you think that there's anything that those states can do to stop those clinics from functioning?
You know, I'm sure that there are things they can try to do with new arguments that we've not heard used before. But it would be sort of like a VA hospital in a sense, right? Where in fact, I remember a story from growing up in Massachusetts where at a VA hospital, there was like a nurse that killed a bunch of patients by deliberately giving them too much or the wrong medication. And it was subject to the death penalty, even though Massachusetts didn't have it because it happened in a federal facility. And I believe that along the same lines, if federal facilities wanted to offer abortion services, even in states that have banned it, I think it would be very difficult for the state to supersede or come in and do anything about it. I mean, it would have to be tested, and there would be a test, but it sounds like it would be pretty solid.
Yeah, because I've heard arguments from people who say that that's a bad idea for Biden to do that by executive order. Like, for example, if a state were to arrest like someone, like a doctor going on site before or after they leave the federal land for having committed the crime of doing an abortion procedure on federal land, like
that would get very dicey. That would get extremely dicey because it's not like an embassy, right? A VA hospital, a federal hospital. It's not like an embassy where literally no rules apply. But yeah, I mean, it's really a complicated legal question.
Yeah, if you could snap your fingers and compel Joe Biden to set up these VA abortion clinics on federal land, would you or would you not compel him to do that?
I'd have to think about it. I would really have to think about it. I mean, the ideal thing would be to codify Roe v. Wade, but that's not up to Biden. That's up to Democrats in the Senate. They don't have the votes. I would want to know more about it before I took a really strong position on it.
I'm of the same opinion.
Yeah.
Do you think if Democrats get the votes after, by some miracle this midterm elections, do you think that the Supreme Court would allow Roe to be codified into law?
From what I've read, it would be very difficult for the Supreme Court to stop it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for taking my call, David.
All right. Dylan from Massachusetts, very much appreciate the call. Let's go next to Andrew from Missouri. Welcome, Andrew.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. So I am actually from the Ozarks in Southwest Missouri, and I have seen it's alarming to me in the last year and 2 years really, how many younger people have kind of bought into the Trumpist talking points and just Trumpism in general, anti-Biden, to the point that it's one of those things where I worry that we're not going to see this pass as the older generation passes, that we're going to have to deal with this for even longer. And I'm just wondering, there's a couple of points to this. How do we combat this brainwashing of the younger generations? Yep. And like, do these hearings help with that, or are they going to really, or are they just going to be ignored by people who are already entrenched? And then with that, do Democrats need to start unfortunately playing the political theater game just to get their base riled up to combat Trumpism overall?
So I don't think that young people are necessarily watching the January 6th hearings in any significantly large number, so I wouldn't count on that. I actually have a different perspective, which is, although there are these young right-wing movements like Turning Point USA targeting people on college campuses, I actually think that the young folks are the ones that have been least brainwashed and the ones that we're sort of counting on. So I don't see them as the biggest problem to solve. The older Facebook conspiracy folks seem like really the problem. But of course, we want to make sure that we're equipping young people with the tools so that they never become indoctrinated in the first place, including critical thinking skills, media literacy, etc.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I don't know. It feels like the right has such a stranglehold on controlling the narrative
Yep.
that I don't know how we can combat that effectively, because they've been at it for so long.
I agree with you, and I've talked about all of the things that need to happen. It's the ones I already mentioned here. Also, the left needs to be as good and as committed as the right to funding groups that are working to grow the movement. The right just throws money at it. They don't care. They won't stop, and it's part of why they succeed.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, Andrew, before you go, can you name 4 countries that start with the letter G out of curiosity?
4 countries that start with the letter G.
Yeah.
We got Georgia, Germany, Ghana, and let's get another one. Oh, nuts on a stick. Oh boy, that's embarrassing.
Well, I would have accepted Greece or Guatemala.
Greece. Oh, thank you. Yeah, there we go.
All right, Andrew, thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You have a good one.
All right, you too. All right, guys, let's take a very quick break. We're taking more calls, so don't hang up if you're holding on. We're going right back to the phones in a moment. If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right, let's hear from a few more people. We take calls via Discord on the Friday show, davidpakman.com/Discord. It's completely free, Let's go to, I don't know. Let's go to Brody from Dallas. Brody, what's going on?
Hey, David. I hope you're doing well.
I actually have a bone to pick with you, I have to say.
All right. Let me have it.
When you call in, you do these beautiful calls, sometimes sort of esoteric topics, but you're respectful and you're kind and all these things. But then it seems like you're plaguing our Discord and subreddit with kind of strange attacks on me and on the show. Are there 2 Brodies, so to speak?
I don't think there are 2 Brodies. I think the latest thing that might have plagued your Reddit was the show about the show.
What was that?
That was the David Pakman show.
Oh my
which
God.
is a show about the show that encourages people to subscribe.
Well, that sounds good. I don't know.
Yeah, every show we talk about the benefits of membership and making sure that they support your show.
Hard to be against that. Well, what's on your mind today, Brody?
I was actually thinking about an interview I heard with Ezra Klein a while back, talking about if we are entering an era of post-persuasion politics, meaning that so many people seem to be subject to asymmetrical polarization or a stronger level of polarization. And I wanted to know, in your observation, because you've been in the game for a long time, do you see the era of politics that we are in now in terms of retail politics, electoral politics? Do you see us moving, or are we already in an area where it's all about registering, cultivating, and turning out a base? Or do you see that there is still room for persuasion on a broader level?
I think it's mostly the former, and there is some of the latter. I mean, I think you're starting to get these smaller and smaller. One of the genius things that Trump did, and I'm not even saying that he did it on purpose, it just happened, is that he reached people who had not been paying attention to politics in any real way. So they didn't even realize that they were being lied to, that Trump's campaign promises were impossible, that they were being propagandized, and on and on and on. So what was genius about it was they completely uncritically were just like, oh, Trump. Oh, yeah, I'm voting for Trump. And they were insulated from any kind of critical thought. And that's why when the Access Hollywood tape came out, it didn't make a difference and all these different things. Increasingly, to win, you have to find those groups of people that have not yet become asymmetrically radicalized the way that you're pointing out, or just asymmetrically sort of devoted to one side or the other. And Trump was able to do that. So I think that it's an important observation, and it's an accurate one.
And just as a quick follow-up to that, do you think that the current infrastructure and the current messaging that the broader Democratic Party and candidates have is capable of fulfilling the mission there, I guess, that you outlined in terms of being able to find folks that are able to be persuaded and create a media ecosystem that promotes that?
Not so far. So far, they've failed on two fronts. One, they've failed to properly fund the effort to create that ecosystem. And number two, they've failed to identify a contingent of the half of the country that doesn't vote that could be sort of assembled as a voting bloc and activated. So far, they've not proven they can do it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking my call, and I will try and behave a little bit better in your Discord.
Yeah, let's keep it clean on there, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Have a great
There's
day.
Brody from Dallas. Great to hear from him. Why don't we go next to, I hope I pronounced this correctly. Is it Kumi from Missouri? Comey? You're muted. Comey, you have to unmute yourself. I've unmuted you, but there you go.
It's Kame, sorry.
Kame, welcome to the program.
I've come to call in about yesterday's January 6th committee findings. Apparently
Okay, you just cut out.
Oh, I cut out?
All right, go ahead. See if you can get the question in.
Okay, so according to the Sixth Committee, the Turner Diaries was used in the planning of the assault on the Capitol. If you don't know, it's the neo-Nazi manifesto used by the far right in many cases of terrorism, like Oklahoma City.
Yep.
And do you think there's a possibility that they could cause like an eventual rise of the far right or set off in the future?
That what would cause that? The Turner Diaries?
No, just casual insertion of white supremacist talking points.
Oh, I don't expect. No, I don't think so. That's not a major. I have many different concerns, but I can't say that that's one of them.
I mean, you have Tucker Carlson at Fox News pulling the strings and inserting the Great Replacement.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I guess it depends on whether you consider all of these things part of the same movement or not. But listen, maybe. I guess I just don't think about things in those terms. If people like Tucker and others start, and they have been sort of weaponizing these ideas, they're putting their own spin on them and making them sort of something new and of themselves, even though it's linked to something else. So, I guess to some degree, but I don't necessarily see things as so kind of siloed and black and white.
I see. Here in Missouri, we had to deal with a barrage of anti-trans laws.
Yes.
Hypocritically, one of them was found out to be a child molester.
One of the people pushing the laws?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not surprising. That's old hat. That's. It would be surprising if that wasn't the case.
True. Every conservative accusation is a confession at this point.
It is. It's incredible. I mean, I haven't heard of the specific one, but we've seen that all over the country.
And also the groomer accusations are getting pretty violent, like Proud Boys attacking drag queen story hours and some people bringing long arms to Disney World.
It's an insane world out there. It's crazy.
It is.
All right. Well, thank you for the call. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. There we go. Always great to hear from people from Missouri. Very, very important. Let's go next to Wasif from Dhaka. Welcome.
Hello. It's been a while. Thank you for, picking me for the call, I guess.
Pleasure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, from Bangladesh.
Yes. Okay.
Welcome.
So my question is, more or less related to, the gun topic, I guess you could say the gun control issue or, whatever you may call it.
Sure.
This is what I think, I have heard this phrase, mainly among, the Zionist Americans. I mean, even, Ben Shapiro went to, let's say, what's his name? Piers Morgan's TV show, right? And he basically, stated out this point. So his point was basically like this, that, our ancestors in, Eastern Europe are in ashes because they didn't have guns to protect. That's why we need, less gun restrictions, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've addressed that
Have you
before.
heard-
It's crazy. I have addressed it. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, listen, Ben Shapiro's Jewish. I'm Jewish. He has fallen for this talking point that if the Jews had had guns, the Holocaust wouldn't have happened. Historians have looked at the claim. It's just the facts aren't true and the conclusion isn't true. Guns were not initially even banned. I mean, there's so many reasons why it's historically inaccurate, but I can assure you that handguns and rifles would not have prevented the Holocaust.
Obviously, I'm asking you because I know you're Jewish, right? That is why I could have asked this question to let's say anyone else doing similar work as you, like leftist podcasts, right? But I chose you specifically to ask this question because I knew your background was Jewish. Okay, thank you for taking my call.
Well, my answer has nothing to do. The whole. I think the important thing is my answer is just based on what historians have written about it, and me being Jewish doesn't change that. Okay, well, thank you for the call. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, there goes Wasif. Great to hear from him. Why don't we go next to Kank from Arkansas? Am I pronouncing that correctly? It's Kank?
Oh, yes, you are, definitely.
Well, welcome.
Welcome. I'm a big fan of yours. I've been a big fan of yours for like 20 years. It's amazing. I'm even talking to you. I'm kind of overwhelmed a little bit.
Thank you. Well, you're doing great so far.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm a progressive in Arkansas, which, Arkansas is super MAGA, super conservative, but that has nothing to do with my question. But basically, do you think you'll ever get a spot in any of the mainstream news organizations like CNN, MSNBC, etc.?
Oh, I mean, I'm not even looking for that. I don't know. Probably not. I don't think so. I can't imagine they'd be interested in me, but I like working for myself and setting my own schedule and taking vacation when I want and not having, 12 bosses and editors and stuff like that. So I'm not even looking for that.
Well, what if there was do you remember Current TV with Keith Olbermann and TYT and stuff?
Yes, I do.
If there was ever a progressive station, in the mainstream of the United States, would you ever consider having a slot, keeping your business the way it is, the David Pakman channel, but also having your own hour, 30-minute long TV show on some sort of mainstream network?
Sure. I mean, listen, I consider all proposals. So certainly, if someone brings me a proposal, I would consider it.
All right, great, because I would love to see you on TV. I think you're a great influence to the American political sphere, and I wish you the best of luck in everything you have going in the future, and I wish to see you debate Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder or any of those stupid right-wingers eventually in the future.
Well, thank you. And remember, we are on satellite TV every night on DirecTV and Dish Network on Free Speech TV.
Yeah, I watch you on Free Speech TV very much.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. But thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. There's Kank from Arkansas. Very, very powerful declaration about television. Let's go next to Atreides from Boston. Atreides from Boston. What are you, like a Dune fan?
Yes, I am very much. I say this as I'm sitting right next to my Dune poster.
All right, good. Well, don't sit too close.
You can hear me all right?
I can hear you fine.
Excellent. Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So Bernie in 2016 and 2020 ran and almost got the nomination, but wasn't able to secure it. But in doing that, he was able to sort of renew a progressive movement within the country and within the Democratic Party. And somewhat similar in my home state of Massachusetts, ranked choice voting was on the ballot back in 2020 and wasn't able to get passed. But now countless more people that I talk to and that I've interacted with and that I see now know about RCV and support it. I might seem a bit of an optimist, but do you think that there's merit in the byproduct of a loss that eventually leads to some sort of victory? Or do you think those are more just self-contained victories with limited success?
No, sometimes that is the case. I mean, it's very hard in any particular situation to say, could this defeat actually be what eventually rockets us to a victory? But in business, that's extraordinarily common, where a business will have an initial product or service which fails, and that allows them to realize, oh, there's actually this completely different way to do it. There's this better idea. And were it not for the failure, if the initial failure had instead been a modest success, they would have never come across the major success. And the same thing can happen. It's just hard in any particular case to say, okay, does the failure of ranked choice mean that eventually it will be an even bigger success? It's so hard to say, but conceptually, that's not an infrequent occurrence. Something fails, it lets you reset and figure out the best way or the right way or whatever, and then you have an even bigger success than you otherwise would have had.
Great. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. New Coke, for example.
Yeah, so what was the deal with that? I've actually read about that. So Coke introduced, was New Coke the one that was clear, or it was just the new flavor?
No, that's Crystal Pepsi. New Coke was like, they sort of changed, I might be getting this a little wrong, but New Coke, they like changed the recipe and tried to like rebrand Coke. This was during like the Cola Wars in the 80s, and it backfired badly. So they brought back Coke Classic, and Coke Classic did much better than New Coke.
Right. Yep. I've read extensively, although it was years ago, about that area. It's actually fascinating, even as a non-soda drinker, generally speaking, like myself.
All right. I did have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So as we know, Biden he's not very popular right now. I believe that recent poll said that 71% of Americans don't want him to seek re-election, which doesn't spell great for the Democrats in 2024. And I've heard whispers and murmurs that Gavin Newsom would be in his absence if he doesn't seek re-election. Something that I don't really have much to back this up. It's more of just a hypothesis, but I'm worried that the DNC would sort of panic and they'd find a moderate Democrat or somebody who's maybe not so moderate, like Tulsi Gabbard, for example, who, if you see, she has not. I was worried they were just going to just throw her to the front because a lot
Tulsi's not even a
her.
Democrat at this point. If the DNC certainly might anoint someone, they might say we're anointing Kamala in Joe Biden's absence on the ticket, or whoever. But they're not going to go to Tulsi. Tulsi's essentially a Republican. She spoke at CPAC, you know.
Yeah, she spoke at CPAC.
It's crazy. Now don't worry about that. That's not going to happen.
Okay, yeah, just a general hypothesis I said.
Yep.
But thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure. Great to hear from you. There goes a treatise from Boston. Great to speak to people. That does it for today, but we will take calls again. Follow us on social media. Interact with the David Pakman Show community. See exclusive content. See when we're taking calls live. And stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok. Let's check out the mailbag. You can email info@davidpakman.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, trolling that you want to do. Info@davidpakman.com is the place. Let's jump right into it. Vera from Finland says, pro-lifers next move. Very exciting. Hey, David, I, for one, am excited for the next step for the pro-life movement, and I have a proposal. Make organ donation mandatory. After all, lots of people die every year because they don't get an organ transplant that they need. So what is more pro-life than preventing those deaths? Honestly, I think this should have been their first step, since it's much less radical than forcing people to give birth. Corpses don't need organs, after all, and I'm sure an all-powerful God can just give you new ones if the afterlife exists. So chop, chop, pro-lifers, your work is not done. Unless, of course, I'm misunderstanding the movement, says Vera, and it's not actually about preserving life at all. But that would mean they're lying douchebags, and lying is a sin, so I'm sure that can't be it. Yeah, this is a good point, and the email is tongue-in-cheek, but we've talked about this before in the context of there aren't even things we force people to do in death. So how is it we can force them to do it medically in life? That's a contrast. That seems like a jarring double standard, and Vera correctly points it out. And the other double standard is if they claim to care about children, then they should be funding pre-K, Head Start, paid paternity leave, paid maternity leave, all of these different things, increasing and making permanent the child tax credits, the larger, all of these things, and they don't. Why? Because it's not really about that. It never was. And unfortunately, in reality, their next move isn't going to be to properly fund maternal care. Their next move isn't going to be to make organ donation mandatory, which would save many, many, many lives. It's going to be to try to either outright ban abortion at the federal level or undo gay marriage or something else that will be horrible. Those will be their next steps, and we know it because they told us that that would be it. Next email is from John. John wrote in about the shooting in Japan and says, "Hey, David, first time sending in a question. Love the show. Here's the question. Could the latest shooting in Japan potentially be stimulated by the United States? Or is it only coincidence that this would happen in the midst of heavy gun controversy? I don't know what the shooter's reason was, but I'm thinking more motivation to action. Could we see more shootings in places mostly considered safe due to the U.S.'s irresponsible actions towards gun control, which is inherently giving more mass shooting examples? As we know, Japan gun violence is very rare, so perhaps as we see more shootings here, it may inspire shooters elsewhere. Lastly, if this were to happen, could there potentially be some point a third party to interfere and tell us to get our guns in check? For example, criticism in the UN. Would love your take. Thanks, John." So the second part I don't know about. The question about the influence is a good one. Now, John isn't saying, and I'm not interpreting this to mean, is it possible someone in the U.S. is actually to blame for the shooting of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe? No, the answer to that would be no. But the question of, has American gun culture, which has legitimized and mainstreamed using firearms to solve problems, disagreements, conflicts, could that be sort of leaking over into other countries? And the answer is sure it could. Sure it could. I mean, the United States has a very hegemonic culture in many ways. And that includes media, of course, TV shows, movies, etc. To some degree also in literature and books. So why couldn't it also be that, hey, look, in the United States, there's this, you have a problem, you have some disagreement, you go and you get a gun and you solve it. So as a theoretical question, I think the answer is absolutely yes. There were questions as to whether the motivations in the particular assassination of Abe were even political, and I believe the shooter said that they're not. But at least as a theoretical question, completely valid, completely plausible. Langdon wrote in about right-wingers who troll me. And Langdon says, "Hi, David. I've been following you for quite some time now on social media. I joined Rumble and Troth Essential about 3 to 4 months ago. I've noticed 90% or maybe more of the comments or replies you get are from right-wing trollers. I would love to get your opinion as to why. My personal opinion is these people are so insecure, they feel the need to defend their right-wing beliefs when anyone challenges them. Thank you." I actually don't think that's what it is. I think it's much simpler. The reason that 90% or more of the replies to my posts on Rumble and Truth Social, aka Troth Essential, are attacks and trolling is that those platforms are overwhelmingly right-wingers. They are right-wing platforms. Rumble less so, and Rumble seems to more proactively want to have more diverse content, whereas Truth Essential or Troth Social or whatever you want to call it is more overtly right-wing. The users are just on the right, and so they see my content and they troll me and they attack me. I think it's that simple, quite frankly, Langdon. David wrote in about Cassie Hutchinson. If Hutchinson was so bad, why was she allowed to work for Steve Scalise, Ted Cruz, and to be the chief staff assistant to Mark Meadows? Wouldn't she have been weeded out before January 6th? How does she support herself now? I don't know how she supports herself now, but this is an endless question. Trump ran on, I will hire the best people. I might not have experience in foreign policy or trade or whatever, although he claimed he was a genius in those areas as well. But his big thing was, I will hire the best people. I hired the best people to build my buildings, and I'm going to hire the best people. That will be my strength. And then he hired all of these different people who then quit or he fired them and he said they were terrible, which of course calls into question his bona fides as someone who can hire the right people. I'm talking about, William Barr and Rex Tillerson and John Bolton, all these people who he has since attacked. Well, it sounds like you weren't really that great at hiring people. And of course, the same thing applies to Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. They insist now, disgruntled, not a very good employee, not particularly smart, didn't really have access to any of the things she claimed she did, can't be trusted, terrible, terrible, terrible. Well, she was not only hired, but promoted, brought to the West Wing to have a very close level of access to Mark Meadows and sometimes Donald Trump. Why? If she was so horrible and incompetent? Well, because they're lying. because they're lying. That's what they say about everybody once they've fallen out of their good graces. Grant wrote in. Grant says, looking for your advice. Hey, David, my conservative friends often bring up talking points they don't fully understand, but they're convinced they have everything right. Sounds like many people I know. I politely inform them when they're incorrect, but unfortunately, I don't have much skill at formulating arguments or remembering facts. When I refute their claims, but don't have the hard evidence to immediately back it up, they assume I'm disagreeing just based on my personal feelings. I'll be honest. I don't have the deepest understanding of government, the economy, etc. I never took any political, economic, or history courses in college. I'd like to think I have a fair amount of common sense, and I'm an adequately logical thinker, but it's often not enough. I'm not a fan of confrontation. I sometimes crumple under the pressure when dialoguing. How can I better prepare for these discussions? Okay, so here's the best thing you can do, Graham. This doesn't just apply to you. It is impossible to always be prepared with the facts on every issue. It's just not possible. This happens to me as well. The most important thing you can do is understand how people are thinking or not thinking when they make these claims, and be prepared to probe how they came to these conclusions. I don't know that much about, I don't know, what's an example? I don't know that much about so many different things. I don't know that much about the Ford versus Chevy debate, right? That's a debate I could not care less about it. I remember in high school, there was a contingent of kids in my high school who were very big on Ford versus Chevy, and certainly American cars are better than foreign cars. Okay, I didn't know a lot about it, but my instinct was that these were not conclusions they were coming to from a very evidence-based perspective. So without knowing a lot about the issue, there would be very easy ways for me to say, okay, so Chevy's the good one, Ford's bad. Okay, how'd you come to that conclusion? Well, I had a Chevy and it lasted a really long time. Oh, okay, that's interesting. And how many Chevys are out there? Well, I don't know. Is it possible that it's millions? Yeah, it's possible. So the fact that you had a Chevy and it lasted a long time, does that tell us a lot about all Chevys? Well, yeah, I feel like it. Okay, so you get the point. The point is, understand and learn the Socratic method of questioning and how to probe people's beliefs. And you don't have to be, nor is it possible to be as prepared as you might want on every issue. Understand how to get people to realize for themselves that they may believe things not based on good evidence. Mice wrote in about a texting scam and says, I wrote a comment on YouTube to your story on Liz Cheney, and I got a reply saying, send me a text with your picture and a phone number. Is this real? It is not real. So we're playing a whack-a-mole with scammers on all platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. On YouTube right now, there are tons of people who are using my face as their profile picture, and they're responding to people and saying, hey, contact me via WhatsApp. I'll send you money. I'll send you free crypto. I'll send you a free product if you review or whatever. Okay, I'm not texting anybody. I can't even respond to emails that I get. I'm just too busy. So I'm not texting with anybody in the audience, number one. Number two, I'm not using WhatsApp to contact anybody. And number three, I'm not sending money to people in the audience. If we did any kind of giveaway, I would talk about it on the show and you would know it. I'm not going to be silent on the show about a giveaway and then reply to YouTube comments one-on-one. Okay, so I'm not texting anybody. I'm not WhatsApping anybody. Don't fall for it. Report those accounts. We're reporting them as quickly as we can. And that's it. Don't respond to any of it. These are scams. Sean wrote in about Trump's presidential announcement. Isn't it obvious, writes Sean, that Trump is announcing an early run because he knows he's going to be indicted? This then gives him a loudspeaker to claim he's being arrested and charged because of politics he will claim to be a political prisoner. I actually don't think so. I think Trump has actually been delaying announcing the presidential run in order to not have the reporting requirements for money that comes in for as long as possible. I do think there's a very good chance Trump announces a run, and it'll probably be, I don't know, maybe right before, but probably right after the midterms. But I don't think that the strategy is announce really soon to try to mitigate or somehow influence the potentially forthcoming indictments. I just don't think so. If people disagree with me, just let me know. And lastly, another perspective on Trump's run. Alan says, "Sir, I keep seeing Trump might announce a 2024 presidential run soon. Is this something we should be hoping for? There's potential to split and ruin the Republican Party for at least the next couple of election cycles." So there's two sides to this. One that we've discussed is, what does it do for Republicans for Trump to run? The other one we've discussed is, what does it do for Trump for a lot of Republicans to run? I think that a lot of Republicans running helps Trump in the sense that if you get all these 2 and 3% type people, maybe Nikki Haley, maybe Ted Cruz or whoever, that splits the more mainstream Republican electorate for a while Trump just consolidates support. So that's more or less what happened in 2016. I think more candidates is good for Trump. Trump running, I can't tell you whether it's good or bad for the Republican Party. I think if Trump runs and loses to DeSantis, for example, it's bad for the Republican Party. It will fracture it, and that would be a really great thing. But some of this we won't know until we see how do the midterms go, number one, and what level of approval does Donald Trump have among the Republican electorate. Questions we won't know in the 2024 context until after the November midterms, but we'll of course be talking about it and covering it. We have a fantastic bonus show for you today. Sign up at joinpacman.com. Coupon code BIGVOTING22. We will see you then, or I'll see you back here on Monday.